Is your business struggling to stand out from the crowd online? At Webamax, we specialize in turning clicks into customers. From SEO and PPC to social media management and stunning web design, we've got you covered. Boost your online presence and drive real results. Ready to take your business to the next level? Visit Webamax.com. That's Webimax.com for a free digital analysis. Roll the web with Webamax.com.
Before history is written, it's played. Before it's frozen in time, it's fought one shift at a time. Before it's etched in silver, it's carved in ice. What happens next will last forever.
The Stanley Cup Final continues. Oilers, Panthers on ABC and ESPN+.
We are audiostack.ai.
Combining AI writing, the best synthetic voices,
with production and delivery.
Be it ads, podcasts, or VOs for video.
Just like this ad.
How would you utilize AI audio? For free.
Go to audiostack.ai/contest.
Give us just a few details.
And you could replace this spot and be heard by millions.
See webpage for T's and C's. audiostack.ai/contest.
Hi there, Duke fans. Welcome to DBR Bites, episode number 51. This is going to be a little bit different from what we've done lately. We're not going to be talking extensively about intel from the basketball team, from the guys who are currently on campus working out or anything like that. We got a couple other interesting topics, though, for you. Let's start with introductions, of course, because after 650 regular episodes and 50 plus DBR Bites, you probably don't know us yet. Let me introduce myself. I'm Jason Evans.
I'm Ron Burgundy.
Right, I'm Ron Burgundy. No, I'm Jason Evans. Been a Duke fan since the early 1980s when I attended Duke. Joining me is Donald Wine. Donald, how are you doing today?
I'm doing all right. I had the U.S. game in town over the weekend. That was a bloodbath for anybody who watched it. But anybody who watched it, I think 3 or 4 of the goals were right in front of me because I was right in the front row, right in front of one of the nets for that game with my best friends and godson and family. So that was cool. I am now in Orlando because I am a glutton for punishment. We are playing Brazil on Wednesday here. Anybody who watches soccer knows that's going to be an interesting game for the United States. Hopefully we can turn it around, but we're getting ready for Copa America, Jason, and the summer is heating up. So now we have to kind of reach into our bag and pull out some topics to discuss.
So very first thing I'm going to mention is this. Literally in the past 30 seconds, past minute or so, we got a Woj bomb. This is not Duke related, but it is college basketball related. Danny Hurley of UConn has decided to turn down the LA Lakers. He's going to remain in college. He turned down apparently a 6-year, $70 million offer that would have made him, I think, like the 4th or 5th highest paid coach in all of the NBA, all of basketball. And instead he's going to go back to UConn and try to win 3 in a row. I don't know if he has quite the roster to get it done, but he's close. And he has definitely shown, Danny Hurley has, that he can coach up these guys and really do something very, very impressive. No matter what the roster is there at UConn. Donald, do you have any literally this came to us seconds ago.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on the decision that Dan Hurley made to stay at UConn and spur the LA Lakers?
I mean, of course, people were trying to compare it to 20 years ago when Coach K did a similar thing, turned down the Lakers. At that time, the best college coach in history already, and trying to turn them down. And they're trying to relate that to this right now. I knew this was coming in the sense that we were told that there were, right before Jason, we jumped on, I saw that he was having a press conference in Storrs, Connecticut. You don't have a press conference at home to tell him that you're leaving. But also the longer that this drew out over the weekend, the more I knew he was coming back because, again, it was probably, UConn hard at work to try and reconfigure some numbers to make it where staying was a little bit better than leaving. And at the end, he decides he wants to stay in college. I again, very, very not surprised that this was happening. Dan Hoyer's a great coach, and now it just means that we have to go get him next year. They're still the defending champs, and we have right now our guys are in the lab trying to make sure that they don't get that three-peat that they seek.
Yeah, I will tell you, I'm a little bit surprised that Danny Hurley chose to do this. The Lakers are obviously an absolutely legendary team. I think they've got a pretty good core. It's not like you're going, lots of time when you're a college coach being offered a pro job, you're not being offered one of the plum positions out there. Occasionally it happens. Brad Stevens had it at Boston for sure. And there are a few others, but for the most part, you're probably stepping up to a lesser professional program. And so there's a lot to build. And I think that may not have necessarily been the case with the Lakers, although when LeBron retires, then that becomes an issue for the Lakers. But the other reason I'm a little bit surprised is I feel like college is in complete and utter disarray at this point. Danny Hurley knows better than me. And maybe he knows that there are things being put in place to bring more stability to the sport. But the fact that every single player on your roster is a free agent at the end of every year is just a really weird situation. The fact that a team like UConn in the Big East is going to, even with money donors, even with people who are firmly behind that program, you're going to, over the course of the next several years, you're going to struggle in NIL to keep up with teams in the Big Ten, teams in the SEC, even the Big 12 and the ACC are just going to, the gap between those schools and the Big East is just going to continue to grow, I think. And it's just going to be, it's going to be harder and harder. I feel like when Coach K turned down the Lakers, I was like, yeah, the college game is just a better place. You're developing these kids over several years. A lot of it to me made sense. I feel like once the one and done became bigger and bigger, it stopped making as much sense. Frankly, now in the transfer portal era, I'm a basketball guy. Would I rather coach guys in the NBA or guys in college? The way the transfer portal is right now, I'd rather coach guys in the NBA. So I'm a little surprised. I get that he loves it. I understand that Danny Hurley loves it, and he loves being in the Northeast. Like the truth is he may be waiting for the next job at some point down the road. If he wants to stay in the Northeast or Boston, although I think Joe Mazzulla is going to be there for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
But that my take is college is screwed up right now. And if I was, and not just, I talked about the transfer portal, NIL, it's also just the whole shape of the sport with conferences tearing themselves apart. The Pac-12 doesn't exist, Donald.
I mean, think about this, Jason, though, like you're talking about the era of college basketball that we're in. And yes, it's very, there's a lot, it's complicated. We'll kind of sum it up with that. But
good word.
The grass is not always greener on the other side. We talked a little bit about the Lakers job when it was rumored that JJ Redick was going to be the
he's
guy.
Back in the running, I'm sure.
Now he's back in the running, probably as he calls the NBA Finals. But Jason, if you think about 20 years ago when Coach K left, or was it going to leave, they were talking about him going to the Lakers, a Lakers team that had just come off of losing in the NBA Finals. And oh yes, they had Kobe and Shaq still on the team.
Yeah,
Shaq had not yet been traded yet, so he turned down, again, a much more stable chance at being a legacy coach. But also, Jason, if you look at the LA Lakers lately, their coaches stay in the job shorter than players stay in college. So, that was probably something that weighed on him. And if you think about all the college coaches that have gone to the pros, a lot of them don't come back to the college ranks. And if they do, they end up coming back in lesser situations than they left. So I think the opportunity, and again, we don't know all the factors he considered, but I think at the end, he probably wants to consider the fact that he can carve out a huge legacy for him at UConn and go down as one of the great coaches that UConn's ever had. Or he could be one of the, 80 million Lakers coaches that have ever existed.
All right. With that, let's move on to our first topic today. And it is the transfer portal. I didn't mean to create that sort of segue here, but it just sort of naturally existed. And I wanted to just look for a moment at transfer portal within the ACC, because I think it's just bonkers that there are so many guys going from one ACC team to another ACC team. I get that from a geographic proximity, and in terms of like knowing programs, it all feels more comfortable. But like, God, remember when there used to be special rules that prevented intra-conference transfers? Like you had to sit out an extra year and stuff like that. I just want folks, look, here at Duke, we've experienced it. Christian Reeves is going to Clemson, TJ Power to UVA, Jaden Schutt to Virginia Tech, and Jalen Blakes to Stanford. I mean, of the Duke transfers, four of them have chosen to stay within the ACC. So we're going to be seeing these guys in alien uniforms, and it's just going to be bizarre. But none of those guys was like huge contributor at Duke. Jalen Blakes was in the rotation toward the back end of the rotation. TJ Power, but none of these guys. Can you imagine if Jeremy Roach was going to Miami, or Mark Mitchell was going to be playing at Wake Forest? You'd just be like, what? I mean, like it would feel kind of crazy. So I want to point out, this is not a phenomenon that's only happened with Duke players. There are a number of really important, significant players on ACC teams from last year who have moved to another ACC team. It's just, I'll start with this. Boopy Miller at Wake Forest, 15.5 points per game last year for Wake. Boopy Miller. He's now playing at SMU. I mean, wow. How weird is that going to be for Wake fans when SMU, when they're suited up against a guy who's been a big time player in their program? Lynn Kidd, 13.5 points per game at Virginia Tech, is now at Miami. Tyler Johnson was almost 9 points per game as a freshman at Louisville. He's gone to Wake Forest. I go on and on. It's just kind of amazing to me. Andrei Stojakovic was 8 points per game as a really promising freshman at Stanford. They had high hopes for that guy at Stanford. He's now at Cal. Stanford and Cal, by the way, new to the ACC, huge rivals. Huge rivals. This is, for Stanford and Cal, this is like going from Duke to UNC. And like Andrei Stojakovic was like the future of that Stanford program. Now he's at Cal. I could go on and on. Brandon Huntley Hatfield was 13 points per game at Louisville. He's going to play at NC State. Mike James, 12 points per game at Louisville, now going also to NC State. NC State basically took two starters from the Louisville team and imported them into Raleigh. Jaden Zachary was 11.5 points per game at BC. He's going off to Clemson. Josh Beadle was at Clemson and is now at BC. Jaden Zachary was at BC, now at Clemson. They've done a trade. Clemson and BC. And by the way, last year, NC State and Clemson did a trade. Jack Clark went to Clemson. Ben Middlebrooks went to NC State. I thought Jack Clark was the better end of that deal. It turned out Ben Middlebrooks. NC State came out on top of that. And then, of course, we can't leave this conversation without mentioning one of the most prominent ones. All ACC defensive team member Malik Brown going from Syracuse to Duke. Donald, it's crazy to me to see so much inside of a conference transferring. Like, if I played at Duke, I feel like I would feel like those other schools are rivals, that they are, we play them so often. We play them every year. We know them really well. And when I was transferring, I would probably look elsewhere just because I wouldn't want to be playing for my rival. But apparently NIL rules the day. And sometimes the NIL is best at the school down the road.
And, I think, first of all, this is not something that Duke fans have had to, it's not like the transfer portal, right? Where we kind of had to sit out a year and then it happened to us. And now we're like, oh my God, why are we in this position that all of college basketball was already in? If you remember, Jason, Michael Benajay left Duke and went to Syracuse, and we had to face him for 3 more years.
Yeah.
So, and that was not like, again, that back then felt weird because back then schools could kind of dictate where you couldn't go if you transferred out. And I think that was the loophole where Syracuse was not listed because they weren't yet a part of the ACC. Then he joined them and then they joined the ACC. So he ended up facing us 3 more times. So you get those, right? And again, even those were weird. And we always looked for the Coach K Benajay interaction in the team handshake line. And it was always very, lovingly and
warm.
He's warm and all of that, right? I think also when you think about this, Jason, this is something that's going to happen. We have mega conferences now. Mega conferences, each conference has like between 14 to 18 teams, right? Or 20 teams. So You're going to see this happen every year now. This is going to be the norm. I mean, because where else are they going to go? If you think about all the games that they're playing, 2/3 of the games that they're playing are against teams in their conference now. So you're going to, if you're thinking about how quickly guys enter the portal and then commit to a team, this is not like high school where they have 2 years, sometimes 3 years to kind of figure out where they want to go, what program suits them most. They're looking for, hey, I got to finish up these classes and I need to transfer somewhere now because I need to get some better now so that I can get ready for summer practices. This is like at most sometimes a 2 to 3 week process for some of these guys, especially some of the good ones. So you're going to see this happen quite quickly because they're going to look at first to the teams they've already seen. And of course, in the case of Duke and everybody in the ACC, who else are they going to recruit? The guys that they've played against that year is easy to start with them. And you see that kind of guy. And we even thought about you going back to the Brotherhood podcast with John Shower. He talked about how he ended up with very quickly ended up with Mason Gillis, but also with Malik Brown, right? He's like, hey, we saw him play. He was a monster. So we enter the portal. We're like, hey, we need a monster. Come on down to Durham if you feel. Jason, I want to think about this because we were talking about this the other day. You had the dynamic of Stanford versus Cal and one guy transferring from one to the other.
Yeah.
And you were like, yo, there's no way that fans would ever take a UNC player coming to Duke or vice versa. Well, let me tell you, Jason, the biggest rivalry in sports is Real Madrid, Barcelona. And there have been 4 players who have played for both, 4 of the greatest players of all time who have played for both teams. Ronaldo, Luis Figo actually transferred from Barcelona directly to Real Madrid. Samuel Eto'o, Michael Laudrup. If you're a soccer fan, you know those names. And that is watched by 400 million people every single time they play. So that is something that people are already used to. Jason, let me also tell you this. We just talked about the LA Lakers. Their arch rival, obviously in everything, Boston Celtics. 41 players have played for both the Celtics and the Lakers. 54 players have played for both the Pistons and the Bulls. 74 players have played for both the New York Giants and the New York Jets. Yes, none of those rivalries are as fierce as Duke UNC or Michigan Ohio State. Michigan Ohio State already has had that happen in both basketball and football already. So they're already used to this. My point is this already exists around us. So don't be surprised when one day it happens within the rivalry, because I promise you this, if a UNC player decides to, everyone goes to college to figure out what they want to be. And if a guy goes to UNC for 1 year and decides that he wants to be a Duke graduate, come on down. As long as you've done your classes, because we know how y'all do down there. If he wants to come and decide he wants to bust, UNC's butt for 3 more years, I'm sure all of us would take it, and vice versa. We will obviously be upset if a Duke player went 8 miles down the road, but that's going to happen. And when it happens, we have to understand that this already happens in every sport and every rivalry. They've already had to deal with this. One day, Duke UNC is going to have to deal with it too.
Yeah, I'm just not mentally ready for this to happen.
Yeah, you got to put yourself in mind for. And if Jason, if you think about this, right, in football, and again, NC State is a rival. It's not the rival, but it is a rival. We had Jordan Waters is going to be playing for NC State this fall. So
that's going to be crazy.
It's going to be super weird. It's going to be super weird, but it's, again, the new norm of these mega conferences means this is something we're going to have to get used to.
All right, with that, we're going to take a quick break. On the other side, while we're on this break, folks, I need all of you thinking. I want you going back in history. Rack your brain. Who are the best defensive players in Duke history? Because on the other side of the break, Donald and I are each going to draft a team. 5 players plus 1 sub, 5 starters, 1 sub of the best defensive players ever at Duke. And then all of you are going to get to tell us whose team wins the contest. That's coming up after the break. Hey, Duke fans, warmer, sunnier days are here. Fuel up for them with Factor's no prep, no mess meals. Meet your wellness goals in time for the summer thanks to Factor's menu of chef-crafted meals.
Jason, I can tell you Factor has so many options, more than 35 meals and 60 add-ons each week. So I never got tired of eating the same thing every day. You won't be needing to constantly clean pots or pans, and you'll be ready to eat in just 2 minutes. Just pop in the microwave and you're ready to go.
So head to factormeals.com/DukeBB50 and use that code DukeBB50 to get 50% off your first box. That is a great deal. And then you also get 20% off your next month. That's factormeals.com/DukeBB50 for 50% off your first box and 20% off your next month with Factor Meals.
So get to eating great food and be on the way to your health goals with Factor.
This episode of the Duke Basketball Roundup is sponsored by BetterHelp.
Wow, the year feels like it's flown by. As we enter the summer, it is the time to take note of the wins that life has brought you. And it's a good time to make adjustments for the rest of 2024. Talking to someone about those wins and improvements can help you recalibrate and give you something to focus on for the remaining months of the year.
That's right, Donald. That's where BetterHelp can provide the alley-oop. Getting advice from a therapist can help you keep the focus on the good things in life and learn how to handle the hard better. It's online, it's flexible, and you get to fit it within your schedule. You just fill out a questionnaire and you get matched to a professional that can serve as your guide, and you can switch anytime you wish.
So if you need help setting those goals to carry you through 2024, try BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/DukeBB. That's DUKEBB today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/DukeBB.
We are audiostack.ai.
Combining AI writing, the best synthetic voices,
with production and delivery.
Be it ads, podcasts, or VOs for video.
Just like this ad.
How would you utilize AI audio? For free.
Go to audiostack.ai/contest.
Give us just a few details.
And you could replace this spot and be heard by millions.
See webpage for T's and C's. audiostack.ai/contest.
We are audiostack.ai.
Combining AI writing, the best synthetic voices,
with production and delivery.
Be it ads, podcasts, or VOs for video.
Just like this ad.
How would you utilize AI audio? For free.
Go to audiostack.ai/contest.
Give us just a few details.
And you could replace this spot and be heard by millions.
See webpage for T's and C's. audiostack.ai/contest.
Donald, we're back from the break, and as I teased on the other side, it is time for silly season, time for us to do one of these, let's go back and forth picking players kind of things. We've done these in the past. They're usually fun, and we really enjoy the feedback that we get from the listeners on these. Folks, as you listen to us do this, I want you to be sending those emails, dbrpodcast@gmail.com. Send us an email and tell us which of us has drafted the better team. Here's the criteria, Donald. You must pick by position. So every time you name a player, you better be saying, this is my point guard, this is my small forward, this is my power forward, whatever it may be. Picking by position. We're going to go back and forth, and we are going to select the best defensive players in Duke history. You're trying to form a team. Here's the situation. The score is 72-71. There's 25 seconds left, and you need to put 5 guys on the floor who will prevent the other team from scoring. That is all that is going on here. I don't want to hear nothing about no offensive stats. I don't want to hear nothing about that guy's a great,
we're just getting stops here.
Like
We're just getting stops here.
We're doing nothing but getting stops. This is nothing but stops. Donald, you said you were going to figure out which one of us we're going to do a snake draft. So whoever goes one, the other guy gets 2 and 3. Which one's going first?
So Jason, obviously you're about to see this, but the listeners out there aren't. I literally went to wheelsofname.com, which is great if you need to draw names out of a hat and you don't have a hat. So I put Jason and I's name on here, and I'm just going to tap, and I'm going to spin, Jason, and you're going to be able to see.
I can see it
spinning, and it is going to be me,
Donald,
with the top pick. And Jason,
wait, hold on. You can choose to go first or second.
I want to go first. I want to go first. Yeah,
I know. We're both taking the same player first.
Yeah, we're going first. So we're going to start now, right?
Go ahead and pick Shane Battier.
You damn right I'm picking Shane with my first pick. 3-time National Defensive Player of the Year. Only he and Tim Duncan can say that. 4-time ACC all defense, and I believe 2 or 3 of those times he was also defensive player of the year. Not again, we're not talking about offensive
Wait, actually,
stats.
he wasn't. The ACC did
Oh,
not
they didn't
instigate.
start it yet.
They didn't have a
Yeah.
defensive player of the year until 2005.
Right.
Which you know,
And
you get
yes,
to guess, but I'm telling you, Shane would have won it.
Shane would have won it 3 times, maybe even 4. But yes, he was 4-time all ACC, all defense, and again, not even excusing the pro stats. If I want to stop, you get the guy who won this thing 3 times in a row.
All right. So, by the way, I'm just going to comment on your pick. First of all, I want to say I think I probably just lost. I think that it's very likely. It's very likely that everyone else is going to say whichever team has Shane is the best defensive team. You know, I'm just gonna have to live with that.
I mean, it doesn't. Hey, this is why it's a snake draft, Jason. You get the next 2 picks. So
I got 2 good. I got 2 good ones teed
I'm
up.
sure you do. There's a lot of options out here.
Where are you putting? You're putting Shane at power forward, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. No, I put him at small forward.
Oh, that's interesting because I think there are
Small
not
forward.
a lot of power forwards.
You maybe.
We'll see.
Maybe.
All right. So in any event, the thing I was going to say about Shane was, Donald, do you want to know the list of all the Duke players to average more than 2 steals and 2 blocks per game? Ready? Here's the list. Shane Battier did it as a junior. Shane Battier did it as a senior. That's the list.
Yeah.
Not a long list.
I got my rebounding, got my blocks, and of course, I got my charges. Ain't nobody driving the lane against me.
Okay. All right. So my turn. And I'm going to start with the only guy who I think you can possibly compare to Shane, and that is Sheldon Williams. Sheldon was the 2-time National Defensive Player of the Year. Not 3, but at least he did it twice. He is still to this day Duke's rebounding leader. And rebounding is part of all this.
Mhm.
You can be great on defense, but you got to get the rebound when you force them to miss the shot. As a senior, I just want folks to hear these numbers. As a senior, Sheldon Williams averaged 3.8 blocks per game and 1.7 steals per game. I mentioned Shane, 2 blocks, 2 steals per game. Well, the only guy who averaged more stocks, more steals plus blocks than Shane Battier is Sheldon Williams. Again, 3.8 blocks, 1.7 steals per game as a senior. By the way, that year he also had close to 11 rebounds per game.
Yeah.
I just want folks to understand what 3.8 blocks per game is like because it's absurd. Like, people get real excited about what Mark Williams and Derek Lively have done the past couple of years. Just elite rim protectors. And honestly, if I didn't have Sheldon, if I didn't have the landlord as my center, I was looking hard at Lively and Mark Williams. Mark Williams averaged 2.8 blocks per game. That's almost a full block less than what Sheldon Williams did. There is a reason that he is known as the landlord. He has the 3 top blocking seasons in Duke history. 1, 2, and 3 is Sheldon as a sophomore, junior, and senior. So that is who I'm taking as my center. And then as my small forward, as my wing, I'm going with Billy King. Billy King was the NABC, the National Defensive Player of the Year in 1988. And I think, like, don't look at the stats, people. If you're young, you're probably not going to really know all of what Billy King was about. Billy King's stats actually aren't that super impressive in terms of blocks and steals, because when Billy King was guarding a guy, the opposing team just kind of went, oh, well, he's not playing anymore. We'll just go 4-on-4 with the rest of us, because what Billy King is doing to this guy, just forget about it. Billy King was really, in my opinion, the first truly great lockdown defender, like just eliminate a player from the opposing team's arsenal. And he is legendary for what he did to Mark Macon. Mark Macon had one of the great freshman seasons in college basketball history for Temple. He was a scoring force, and everyone out there thought that Mark Macon was unstoppable. And Duke played Temple in the NCAA tournament, and Billy King wrecked Mark Macon. It's still to this day considered perhaps the greatest individual defensive performance in college basketball history. So Mark Macon, by the way, like, literally wasn't as good as a sophomore, junior, and senior as he was as a freshman, because he was still having nightmares about playing against Billy King. Those are my 2 picks. Donald, it's your turn.
Yeah. And first of all, 2 great picks. Both guys very, very high on my list. Jason, since I have the next 2 picks, I'm going to start with my point guard. And my point guard is the very first ever in ABC Defensive Player of the Year. Jason, you know who it is. It's Tommy Amaker. Yes. He's going to be my point guard. Again, just one of the few guys. There's very few guys who could compete with him. And he had that just not going to make, he had that attitude where you were just not going to get a shot off on him. The next guy I have, Jason, and this is going to be a little bit difficult because, again, like you said, we're doing positions. So I am going to go with another Defensive Player of the Year. I'm going to go at my point guard, or I'm sorry, at my power forward, Grant Hill. Grant Hill, another Defensive Player of the Year. And again, him combined with Shane Battier means that I don't even know if you're going to make it to the center spot because the wing and the inside are just going to be protected by those two.
Honestly, I probably would have put Grant as the small forward and Shane as my power forward.
Hey, we have positionless basketball on this defensive team. They can guard multiple positions, which is a great thing that you need when you're trying to get one stop.
All right, Donald. So I've got 2 picks in a row here, and I'm going to pick a couple teammates. This is going to be very interesting.
Ooh, interesting.
Right. Yeah. So you already took Tommy as your point guard. I'm taking Chris Duhon, C-Du, as my point guard.
I love it.
Chris Duhon, by the way, all-time steals leader at Duke. No one at Duke has ever gotten more steals than Chris Duhon. And in fact, of the top 10 steal seasons in Duke history, Chris Duhon has 3 of them, which is pretty darn impressive. Unfortunately, I don't really know why, but he never won National Defensive Player of the Year. I think that you could have made a pretty good argument that he should have won National Defensive Player of the Year, but he never did.
He wasn't going to win freshman year because that was Shane.
Right. He didn't have a chance freshman year, but I'm saying he had 3 more years.
Yes.
And then I'm going with his teammate Jay Will as my shooting guard. I think shooting guard is a position that's a little thin here for Duke. There are a couple other guys I had on my list, but I really like Jay Will. He is 6th all-time in steals at Duke. He has 2 of the top 10 steal seasons in Duke history. So between my 2 guards, I've now taken up 5 of the best steal seasons that you've ever seen at Duke. These are just 2 guys, Duhon and Jay Will, who worked really, really well together, and they would cut off the opposition from being able to get into a good position defensively. So that's who I got, Jay Will and Duhon as my 2 guards.
Yeah, I like those 2. Obviously, I love Chris Duhon. And the thing about Jason, you talked about Chris Duhon, all-time leader in steals, Sheldon Williams, all-time leader in rebounds and blocks. The way that college basketball is going, those will stand for a very, very, very long time.
Oh, yeah.
Because no one's going to stay enough to put up the numbers necessary to even challenge those guys in those type of areas. So, yeah, those are good picks. I'm looking strategically here as well, and I'm looking at.
Well, you've got to take a shooting guard and a center.
You got to take a shooting guard and a center, and we have the 6th man because we talked about having in a pinch if you need a defensive rotation, who you'd bring. So, here's what I'm going to do for my shooting guard. I'm going to go with an ACC Defensive Player of the Year. He was the National Player of the Year, but an ACC Defensive Player of the Year. I'm going with DeMarcus Nelson, and that is might be a sleeper pick because people don't really realize how good of a lockdown defender he was. Like you said, he's not going to get all the steals. He's not going to get all the blocks or anything like that, but he was in your face. And when you needed a stop, DeMarcus Nelson could give you one. So I'm going to have him at my shooting guard. Now, go ahead.
Really quick, I want to mention about DeMarcus Nelson. He was on my list of one of the guys that could be taken here. I really strongly considered him for that spot other than Jay Will. I want to mention 2 real performances he had that are worth highlighting. I shouldn't be shilling for your team, but I'm going to go ahead and do it right now. So DeMarcus Nelson, Duke played Davidson that year. It was Steph's sophomore season. And at that point, Steph was a force. He was like one of the top 5 scorers in all of college basketball. And DeMarcus Nelson took on the job of guarding Steph Curry, forced Steph into 8 turnovers in that game. And Steph scored 20 points, I think, but that was a year where Steph averaged like 26, and he was not super efficient doing it. He only had 2 assists in the game. I mean, it was a close game, a really good game. That was a very good Davidson team, as folks will remember. And Duke, one of the major reasons Duke won is because DeMarcus Nelson just made Steph have a really tough game. He also had a huge game that year. It was 2008, was DeMarcus Nelson's senior year. Duke played UNC. I want to say Duke was like 20-1 and UNC was like 19-1 or 19, something like that. They were like both ranked in the top 3 in the nation at that point. And one of the key players for UNC was Wayne Ellington, who was a hell of a shooting guard. And DeMarcus Nelson just locked him down. Wayne Ellington shot 3 of 14 in that game. And Duke beat Carolina, and we were number 1 after that. And a lot of it was because of DeMarcus Nelson's great defense. I think, in fact, that game where he locked up Wayne Ellington and just ruined his day is a major reason why DeMarcus Nelson won ACC Defensive Player of the Year in 2008. All right, continue with your picks.
Yeah, so I have a center and I have a 6th man to do. So, Jason, here's what I'm going to do.
Wait, you only get to do your center. This is 2 in a row.
Well,
then
no,
I go, then you get your 6th man.
Right, what I'm saying is I have those things left to fill. So I don't have to fill my center. I can fill my 6th man if I want to. And I'm about to.
Go for it.
Because I'm going with another NABC National Defensive Player of the Year. I'm going with Wojo. And Wojo as my 6th man coming off the bench. You ain't stopping that. And also just, of course, probably the most memorable defensive stop in Duke UNC history is courtesy of Wojo, and it was in 1998 to win the game. And then the hug with Coach K, I love you, Coach. That play. Look, Wojo could stop anything. He could stop water from a whale. He could stop, paint from a house. Like, this man was amazing. And so to have him come off the bench to compliment Tommy Amaker and DeMarcus Nelson, I'm with that. So now I got 3 national defensive players on my team, Jason. What you got?
Okay, I like the pick of Wojo, although I feel like most people, as you look back sort of over the history of the National Defensive Player of the Year, most people think Wojo's sort of the weakest of all of them. In fact, I think
got a trophy, so he still got it.
I think there's a pretty good argument that there are way better defensive players of the year than Wojo, but that's fine. That's cool. I got to go with my power forward, and I'm taking Zion Williamson. I mentioned how impressive it was that Shane Battier had that 2 steal, 2 block per season season. Zion came darn close. 2.1 steals per game, 1.8 blocks per game for Zion Williamson. Zion, by the way, also had like almost 9 rebounds per game. Look, the most famous block in Duke basketball history is Zion Williamson blocking DeAndre Hunter's 3-point attempt from the corner. I'm convinced
from the paint. He jumped from the paint.
Like it's the most outrageous, the most ridiculous block in history. I was terrified when you said you were going to take your 6th man before your center. I was like, oh my God, if he takes Zion, there are no power forwards left for me. But I'm very fortunate that you didn't do that. So I still get to take my Zion. I think Zion is just like, what he could do athletically was unbelievably elite. Also, I'm pandering to the audience a little bit. Most of the guys we've named are a little bit older. I think having Zion is going to get me some votes. Mm-hmm. So when it comes to my 6th man, I had a big debate here, and this is not easy. I seriously considered Jim Spanarkel. I just want to mention Jim Spanarkel really quick. Jim Spanarkel had he holds the record for most steals in a season with 93. He averaged 2.7 steals per game. Like, that's 15% more than anyone else in Duke history. Like, as great as Chris Duhon was at steals, his best season was 2.3. Spanarkel was 2.7. But like I said, the voters and their age and the such, I think the Jim Spanarkel voters, are not a lot of them out there listening to our podcast. So rather than taking Jim Spanarkel, I'm going with Dante Jones. My man, Dante.
It's a good pick.
Let me tell you something. I got an athletic team here, my friend. You got Wojo. I got Dante. Dante Jones was such a great defender that when he went to the NBA, they didn't care that he couldn't score. He lasted the league for like 15 years doing nothing but playing outrageous defense. Just a phenomenal athlete, a guy who would make you work your butt off to merely get inches up the floor. Like in World War I, you had trench warfare where you had to fight for every inch. Dante Jones was a guy that if you were in one trench and Dante Jones in the other one, you're like, oh Jesus, I don't want to do this. So that's my 6th man. And one of the reasons I like him as 6th man is that Dante is very, very versatile with his strength and physicality. I think he can move to a lot of these different positions if I need him to.
Yeah, that's a good choice. And so with the last pick, I have a center, and Jason, pandering to the younger crowd that we might have. There's a couple of guys out here that could make a solid case.
I just need to know, you're going with Mark Williams or Derek Lively? Which one?
Well, so it's between those two, and I'm going to go with I coined the nickname for him, so I got to go with BMFMW, Big Mother Effing Mark Williams. Mark Williams, ACC Defensive Player of the Year. So again, all my guys here, either National Player of the Year or ACC Defensive Player of the Year. We got trophies hanging in our big trophy case here. But Mark Williams, and again, Jason, we've talked ad nauseum about how much we loved seeing him develop from early freshman year, where it didn't feel like he was in place on offense, but on defense, it always felt like he knew where to be, and it just felt, he just needed to click over on the offensive end. And once he did, he had an incredible sophomore year, and now was in the NBA and still going to this day. So I'm going with Mark Williams. And Jason, I know you have an athletic team. I'd like to say my team's pretty athletic too, but also we got it all. We got charges, we got steals, we got blocks, we got rebounding, and we just got in your nose, stick you up, lockdown defense. And then we got heart. Sometimes when you need a stop with a game on the line, heart is in that equation, and we got a lot of that with my team.
All right, folks, it's now your turn. We need to hear from you. dbrpodcast@gmail.com. Send us those emails. And here are the teams, just to recap them. Jason's team: Chris Duhan, Jay Will, Billy King, Zion, Sheldon Williams, and Dante Jones. And here is Donald's team: Tommy Amaker, DeMarcus Nelson, Shane Battier, Grant Hill, Mark Williams, and Wojo. We want to know who picked the better defensive team. I don't want no questions about offense.
So, Jason, I also want to say this, because there's going to be people who are going to come and say, I can't believe you didn't pick X person. First of all, there's only 12 guys that we can pick. I'm just going to go through some of the guys. These are guys that, again, in quick research, that either won an ACC Defensive Player of the Year or made an ACC All-Defensive Team. Trey Jones. Okay, Trey Jones, two-time he was the ACC Defensive Player of the Year, two-time All-Defense. Chris Carrawell, two-time ACC All-Defense.
Sewell was on my man. He is
right. He was on my list. I'm just telling you. By the way,
we talk about legendary defensive performances and things like that. The game freshman year, where Chris Carrawell guarded Tim Duncan, is a legendary defensive thing in Duke history. I came really close, but I just couldn't quite find a spot for him.
Yes, I couldn't find it. I was trying to find Trey Jones a spot as well, but again, same reason. But here's some of the other guys who made all ACC or ACC All Defense that were left on the cutting room floor. So when you email, you can know that they were considered: Derek Lively, Mike Dunleavy, Josh McRoberts, Lance Thomas, Nolan Smith, Matt Jones. Matt Jones was very close to making my six man. Mason Plumlee, Nate James, Jordan Goldwire, and Wendell Moore Jr. So these guys, there's a lot of guys out here that we could have taken for positions. We only had 12 spots, and really we only had 6 for each of us. So this is why there's an editing room floor, ladies and gentlemen. But the great thing is we have an embarrassment of riches, and this is not counting this year's team, where hopefully we already have an All ACC defensive player on the team in Malik Brown. Hopefully he can replicate that this year, and maybe we get a couple more guys on this list.
Yeah, I was going to say, you're not allowed to pick Cooper Flagg based on reputation alone.
Correct. Kama Malach was going to be my center, Jason, but he hasn't played yet. So,
by the way, it's worth noting the reason that Donald and I decided to do this little exercise. You may recall a year ago, last summer, we did best sophomore seasons of all time, because Duke had all those sophomores returning. Well, the reason we're doing best defensive players of all time, drafting a defensive team, is because we expect this upcoming Duke team to be just absolutely elite on defense. There's nothing but great defenders on this team. It's going to be a ton of fun to watch them play. All right, with that, we're wrapping it up here on the latest edition of DBR Bites. Again, please send us an email. Let us know, or tweet at us if you want. What's our Twitter?
At Duke Roundup.
That's us. At Duke Roundup. So tweet at us, send us email, whatever it may be. Let us know which defensive team you like better, mine or Donald's. For Donald, I'm Jason. Here's the Duke Band. Play us out and take us home.